Hiking is a sanctuary for the soul. For some, it's a quiet escape, a way to reconnect with nature, to breathe in the crisp air of mountains and forests. The towering trees, the serene streams, the whisper of leaves in the wind, they all create a sense of peace, a feeling that the world's chaos can't reach you here. Yet, there are moments when the wilderness refuses to be understood, when it transforms from serene to sinister, from welcoming to threatening. There are trails that lure you in with beauty but hide dangers that cannot be explained. Tonight, we explore 5 true hiking encounters, events so terrifying that those who experience them are still haunted to this day. These aren't tales of folklore or ghost stories. These are real encounters, ordinary hikers, lost in extraordinary circumstances, facing something that defied explanation. Encounter 1. The Vanishing Trail. It was early autumn when Jenna, a 27-year-old experienced hiker, decided to go on a weekend adventure with her friends, Alex and Marissa. They had chosen a remote forest trail in the Pacific Northwest, a place known for its thick pines, misty mornings, and hidden waterfalls. The plan was simple: hike during the day, set up camp at night, and explore the waterfall by the second day. The first day of the hike was flawless. The air was crisp, the forest alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. Sunlight broke through the canopy in golden patches, creating a perfect, almost magical atmosphere. Jenna and her friends laughed, joked, and shared snacks as they followed the trail, feeling confident and unbothered. By evening, they reached a fork in the trail. According to the old, slightly tattered map they carried, one path led to the waterfall, the other to a campsite further up the ridge. They debated briefly, but the allure of the waterfall was irresistible. It was supposed to be just a short detour, a few minutes longer than the path to the campsite. The trail initially seemed normal. Small markers guided their steps. The faint sound of running water in the distance gave them hope that they were on the right path. But as they continued, the markers began to disappear. A slight unease settled over them. "It's probably just an unmarked section," Alex said, trying to reassure both himself and the group. They walked for another half hour, and then the path simply ended. Not abruptly, but gradually. The trail that had been clear moments ago was now overgrown, almost swallowed by the forest. There were no markers, no indication of direction, nothing familiar. Only towering trees and dense underbrush surrounded them. Panic set in slowly, a creeping feeling of dread. Jenna suggested retracing their steps. But as they tried to backtrack, the trail seemed to have vanished entirely. No fork, no familiar tree, no sunlight filtering through the branches in the same pattern. They were lost in a forest that seemed impossibly endless. Night fell quickly. They decided to set up camp where they were, hoping the morning would bring clarity. The forest at night was darker than they had ever imagined. Sounds of nocturnal animals were absent. There was no rustling of leaves, no distant calls of birds or insects. Only silence. Around midnight, the first sign that they were not alone appeared. Soft footsteps. Not human footsteps. They were too light, too precise, moving in a circular pattern around their small tent. Jenna's heart raced as she peeked outside. The shadows moved between the trees, just beyond the thin fabric of their shelter. She couldn't make out shapes, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. "Did you hear that?" Marissa whispered, clutching a flashlight. Alex shined the beam into the forest, but the darkness swallowed it instantly. The footsteps didn't stop. They moved closer, then receded, almost like a predator circling its prey. Hours passed like this, each sound amplified in the silence. They barely slept, huddled together, too terrified to move. At first light, the trail reappeared as if nothing had ever happened. They found the waterfall a short walk away. Nothing seemed different, nothing unusual left behind. There were no tracks, no marks, no evidence that anything had been near their campsite. But the memory of the footsteps, the shadows, and that suffocating feeling of being watched stayed with them long after they returned home. Jenna later described the experience as a forest that wanted to keep us, but we weren't sure what it was. Even now, she avoids that trail, and she refuses to hike alone in unfamiliar forests after sunset. Encounter 2. The Whispering Woods. Mark was different from most hikers. He sought solitude, the kind that only came from trekking alone in deep, remote forests. Hiking was his therapy, his escape from city life. One winter, he chose a trail in the northern Rockies, famous for its panoramic views and rarely used paths. The snow had fallen heavily, covering the trail in a thick, pristine blanket. The world was silent, muffled under white. Mark enjoyed the calm, the feeling of walking through a forest untouched for miles. But as he climbed higher, the silence became oppressive, almost unnatural. Then he heard it, a whisper. At first, he thought it was the wind, shifting through the trees. But the sound grew clearer, forming words that sent chills down his spine. Turn back. Not safe. Leave. Mark froze. The whispers continued, low and urgent, coming from all directions. He tried to laugh it off, telling himself it was exhaustion or his imagination. But the forest didn't behave like that. The snow beneath his boots seemed louder than usual, echoing in a space that shouldn't echo. Then he noticed footprints in the snow. Bare footprints. Human, but not entirely. Too elongated, too narrow, like they belonged to someone or something not human. They led off the trail, winding deeper into the forest, disappearing into dense thickets. Curiosity and fear warred within him. He followed the prints briefly, only to realize he was walking in a perfect circle. The trail he had known so well was gone, replaced by an endless labyrinth of snow and trees. Panic set in fully. Mark ran downhill, slipping on ice, branches scratching his face. Hours later, exhausted, frozen, and terrified, he stumbled back onto the main trail near the parking lot. The forest around him was calm, silent, as if nothing had ever happened. No footprints, no whispering, no indication that he had ever wandered in that frozen maze. He never hiked alone in winter again. The memory of those whispers, the impossible footprints, and the overwhelming sense of being guided or watched remains with him. Alex and Priya, both avid hikers, decided to climb a remote ridge known for its breathtaking sunrise views. The day began normally, but by the time they reached the base of the ridge, a thick fog had rolled in, reducing visibility to only a few feet. As they ascended, they noticed something strange. Dozens of small, glowing eyes peering at them from the misty trees. At first, they assumed it was deer or some nocturnal animals, but the eyes were stationary, unblinking, and unervingly high. Too high to be deer, too still to be birds. A growing sense of dread settled over them. Every time they tried to take a photo, the eyes vanished, only to reappear a few feet away. The fog thickened unnaturally as they climbed higher. The snapping of twigs and rustling of leaves echoed all around them, yet nothing was visible moving in the haze. By the time they reached the summit, the ridge appeared empty. The sun rose, dissipating the fog, but the memory of those unblinking eyes stayed with them. For weeks afterward, they could not stop thinking about the feeling of being watched by something unseen, something that didn't belong to this world. Encounter 4. The cabin in the woods. Sarah and her younger brother, Michael, were exploring a rarely used trail in the Appalachian Mountains. They had packed light, planning to hike to a small lake and return before nightfall. As twilight approached, they stumbled upon an old wooden cabin. It looked abandoned, yet smoke curled from its chimney. Driven by curiosity, they approached. The door creaked open, revealing a cabin that looked perfectly lived in. Food on the table, a fire in the hearth, and 2 chairs facing it as though someone had been sitting there moments ago. Suddenly, Sarah felt a presence. A whisper, soft but distinct. "You shouldn't be here." The door slammed shut behind them. They hadn't touched it. Heart racing, they ran outside, only to find the cabin gone. In its place was nothing but the forest, untouched and silent. They searched the area for hours, retracing every step, but the cabin had vanished without a trace. No path, no marks, nothing. Sarah claims that some nights, she can still hear the faint crackle of firewood and the whispering voice in her dreams. Encounter 5. The shadow that followed. Liam and his friends camped near a ridge in the Rockies during summer. That night, Liam awoke to a strange shadow moving across their campsite. It didn't belong to any of his friends. It was tall, impossibly thin, humanoid, but wrong in every proportion. Frozen with fear, he watched as the shadow lingered at the edge of the firelight. Every time he blinked, it seemed to shift, staying just out of reach. His friends remained asleep, unaware. By dawn, the shadow had disappeared, but deep, Strange footprints were imprinted in a circle around their tents. Not human, not animal. Something else had been there. They left immediately, abandoning the ridge forever. Even years later, Liam avoids camping on ridges alone. Sometimes, when the wind is right, he swears he can see that same thin shadow watching from afar. Conclusion hiking is supposed to be a peaceful escape. But for these hikers, nature's beauty became a trap, a stage for experiences that defy explanation. Footsteps in the dark, whispers in the snow, glowing eyes in the fog, vanishing cabins, and shadows that linger long after sunrise. All reminders that the wilderness is full of mysteries that humanity is not meant to fully understand. The next time you lace up your boots, remember this. The forest may seem inviting, but sometimes it watches. Sometimes it waits. And sometimes it doesn't let go, because not all encounters can be explained, and some things are better left unseen.